Welcome back to my podcast, dear listeners. We're on episode 78, and today I'll tell you about the orgasm. Like I mentioned before, it was not difficult to impress me. If you had some skill or could do something that I could not, I was impressed. Alric was a guy who was one or two batches junior to me. He was the librarian at the Hillside Library. We had this club with some activities, and the library was one of the club activities. So, Alric was the librarian for this library. I was in awe because how does one even know that the position of the librarian is open, and how does one apply and even get hired? Just like writers, journalists, and painters, librarians were this elusive breed for me. I had never really spoken to Alric before. Of course, living in the same township, we were aware of each other's existence. But when I started going to the library, we got acquainted. As we spent some time together, Alric got more comfortable with me. One day he asked me if I would like to come help him tidy and rearrange the library on a weekend, noon. I was more than delighted to. Neki or Pooch Pooch, I loved being around books, and to have access to all these books was amazing. I remembered all the times in school when I longed to read the most popular books, but they were always grabbed away before it was my turn to get them. And here we were, surrounded by all these popular books. I felt like a special club member who had been invited for a sneak peek of the products before any Aam Janta had access to the collection. I had never before been in a position where I had access to so many books that I wanted to read, all at my disposal, within arm's reach, that I could just reach out and pick up any. Having such exclusive access to a library was like a dream come true for me. We spent some time tidying, dusting, and rearranging the books. Then Alric asked me in a conspirational whisper, "Want to see something?" "What?" I asked delightedly. He reached into a lower corner of one of the shelves and pulled out a non-remarkable looking little book. It was not a coincidence that the book had been tucked away in a discreet corner of the library. Alric had placed it there. He became comfortable enough to show me his secret stash of racy literature. Actually, just one book. This unremarkable looking book contained some of the most graphic descriptions of the intimate acts that I had ever read till this point. This book made all the Mills and Boon books seem like PG-13 material. Alric knew by heart which pages exactly were peppered with paragraph after paragraph of erotic literature, shall we say. There were a few other books peppered with erotica, but I hadn't yet come across any. Scandalized, I read the pages. This led to us discussing adult movies. I told Alric that I had never seen an adult movie and would very much like to see one. He said he could arrange for it. Both of Alric's parents worked, so it was easy to find privacy at his place. We arranged for a viewing at his place. With eager anticipation, I went to Alric's house. He popped the video cassette into the VCR and we watched the movie together. I guess Alric had already seen the movie before because he spent more time observing me than watching the movie. Now, this was my first time watching one, so I was paying rapt attention. Alric commented on how immersed I was, and he looked amused, so I got embarrassed. The movie itself was pretty average and meh, but since it was my first one, I wouldn't know. Later, as Alric and I spent more time together, he asked me to drop by the library once again, presumably to help tidy up. I went there and we were chatting. I was sitting on the table at one point, and Alric walked up to me and kissed me on the mouth. It felt like nothing. I had been half expecting something like this because all of our time together seemed to be leading up to this. But also, I was surprised because he had a girlfriend. Alric told me that his girlfriend did not let him do anything and he was very desperate. He told me that his desperation had reached such a level that one day he had brushed past his sister so that he could feel her chest. Alric and his girlfriend had been together since a couple of years, but after the longest time of begging, she had allowed him only a couple of chaste, closed-mouth kisses. Alric asked me if I would be interested in getting frisky. I'm not sure what was my thought process at that time. I had been giving it some thought, and I felt that if I wasn't in a relationship, I was free to explore. I felt like this was the time to find out if I was compatible with someone or not. It was time to experiment and see what I liked and what I didn't like in the bedroom department. When it came to the part about him already having a girlfriend, I think my attitude was influenced by mainstream cinema and other love stories and even music videos of the time, where the theme almost always was about the man already in a relationship, or maybe the woman who then meets the love of his life or her life. And usually in these stories, the second person is the true love, and the hero would end up with this second girl having realized that she was the one for him, not the girlfriend who was originally in the movie. I guess I secretly wanted to be that true love. And so, we arranged to meet in the library one day. Alric had placed a makeshift sheet for me to lie on. He asked me to lie down on it and close my eyes. I did so. Alric undressed me, and then I felt something glide all over my body. It started on my face, then moved downward over my shoulder, over my breast and nipple, over my belly, down my leg. I realized that he had taken off his clothes, grabbed his thing, and was rubbing that all over me. I did not like that at all. That shouldn't be the first contact. You don't touch your thingy to my face and all over me as the very first thing you do. Why did he think that was the first thing to do? I didn't say anything though, but things did improve after that. This was the first time Alric had been able to try anything on these lines. So we were both learning. After my disaster first boyfriend experience, anything would be an improvement. Simply an absence of pain would be an improvement. So the bar was very low. Alric managed to make me feel good when he touched my breasts. Till this moment, I had not experienced pleasure from breast stimulation from a guy. Alric could see on my face that I had liked something that he was doing. He was doing multiple things, so he was not sure exactly what I had liked. So he asked me. He had been stroking the base of my butt, and he had been also stimulating my nipple or breast. So he was convinced that it was his butt stroking that I liked, but no, I had liked what he was doing to my breast. This brought back a forgotten memory, very embarrassing one, of when I had been holding a relative's newborn in my lap in my early teens. We were all watching TV, the bunch of us. The baby, out of the blue, latched onto my breast suddenly, and before I could disengage, I felt the most pleasurable feeling I had ever felt in my entire life. I was mesmerized and processing this when I noticed that the baby's dad, who had been constantly glancing at the baby, had seen this. And now he was just looking with a stunned expression. All of this lasted a few seconds and then I just pulled the baby away. But it had been an intense experience. Till then, I had never thought my body could feel so much pleasure. Those few seconds had brought immense pleasure and also intense mortification or embarrassment, all at the same time. No wonder that memory had been pushed to the back of my mind so far. After a bit, Alric and I left. Alric later told me that he was very surprised because as he was walking home from the clubhouse, he had creamed his pants. This had never happened before. This made me giggle. It felt nice to have that effect on someone in a consenting situation, of course. I think I met Alric one more time for some more above the belt action, and that was it. One day, Alric asked me if I'd like to read another book. He gave me the book, which was written by a woman describing how to have multiple orgasms. I was intrigued. By now, at age 19, I knew that there were varying degrees of pleasure during masturbation. If you waited till you were aroused, then the pleasure was more intense and sweet. If you were already aroused and then fantasized for a bit, then the entire experience was more intense. My method was to lightly tap my clit with my index finger, barely touching it. Almost not touching it initially, and then barely making contact, and then later actually tapping it lightly. As the orgasm was near, I would tap a little more intensely and faster, and that was it. I would explode in the sweetest orgasm. The best feeling in the world, my own little secret. Also, once I had orgasmed, my clit was way too sensitive and couldn't be touched for the next few hours at least. I usually did not touch it again until I felt aroused again, which was usually not till the next day or the next few days or maybe the next week. I had also noticed something else. If I had not masturbated through the month, my clit did not hurt during my period. But if I had masturbated about twice between periods, then the clit did hurt for a while. But if I had masturbated more frequently than that, then the clit would be intensely painful during the period. So painful. This was in addition to the period cramps that I experienced on the belly area. Once I remember the pain was so bad, I was holding a hot water bottle over my belly lying in bed. And then, when the clit pain got so intense, I moved the hot water bottle there in agony. My maid walked by just then and looked at me very curiously. But this pain was usually on the first day, and then it was as though the clit had reset and was ready for use again. Now, as I read this book, I was intrigued. I decided to follow this woman's instructions for multiple orgasms. The book stated that once you reached orgasm, you needed to continue doing what you were doing, that is, stimulating your clit, and soon you would feel a second orgasm. I placed the book aside and did so. I touched myself gently, then tapped the clit a little faster, and soon I felt the orgasm rise. As the orgasm came to a completion, I continued tapping my clit. There was no feeling, but I continued tapping as per the instruction. There was absolutely no sensation after a bit, so I let it go. But this had changed something in my body. My pleasure did not feel the same the next time I tried self-pleasuring. I did not feel as good as before. Had I damaged my clit by continuing to stimulate it after it had withdrawn, after it was done? Not only was the pleasure not the same, there was no orgasm. Following the instructions in that wretched book had not only not resulted in multiple orgasms, I now had lost my one and only orgasm. Over the next few years, no matter what I did, I never experienced an orgasm again. I tried not masturbating for a long time to reset my clit. I later tried rubbing instead of tapping, but no matter what I did, I had lost my ability to experience an orgasm. I would experience arousal, then some pleasure as I stimulated myself, not the same level as before, and then when it was time for the orgasm, that's it. It would just end, it would just taper off. I would experience the physical symptoms of an orgasm, the heartbeat, the curling of the toes, the sweat, all of that, but not the accompanying pleasure. I felt empty and hollow. I felt cheated and betrayed. What had I done? A harmless little experiment, and this huge loss for a lifetime? This was so wrong. I was so frustrated. And I was alone in this. I could tell no one. This friendship with Alric had cost me more than I could ever imagine it would cost me. Plus, I could not discuss this with anyone. I suffered in silence. Anyway, what could anyone do once this had happened? You couldn't undo what happened, right? The delicate organ had changed, and I don't think anything could change it back again. Later, I asked Alric to take his book back, but he asked me to keep it for some more time. Furious and frustrated, I threw the damn book away. This was an outcome I had not expected or anticipated, and I was devastated. This was the rest of my life we were talking about. After a few days or a few weeks, Alric asked me for the book back, saying someone was willing to buy it for 20 rupees or so. He wanted to make the money. I told him I had thrown it away, but could not bring myself to tell him what had happened to me. It was too personal. Alric fretted the loss of the little profit he would have made. I did not tell him that I had lost a lot more than he could even comprehend. Years and years later, when we got in touch via social media, I did tell Alric what had resulted from his cursed book. He just said I might have gone at it too hard and damaged it. But no, I hadn't gone too hard. I had followed the instructions in the book exactly. Why did that innocuous action cost me so much? The whole world could have orgasms, except me. It was as though something precious had been snatched away from me. Can you imagine a life without orgasms? I'm living it. Sad as this was, life went on. Next time I'll tell you some other stories. Till then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.